What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash podcast. Hope you all are doing very well today. We're your number one source for all that is happening across emerging tech. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch the show so you never miss an episode. Today, I'm joined by John Adam, CRO at Aimprosoft, here to talk about how they are integrating AI into software development life cycles for companies. Awesome, man. John, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. How you doing today?
Thanks, Brandon. It's a pleasure. I'm doing well. Deep into my afternoon now. Knocked out a few things earlier in the day, and happy to be joining you.
Excellent. Sounds like a great start to today. To kick things off, I'm sure people would love to know a little bit more about yourself. If you don't mind telling us a bit about maybe your story and what maybe originally also sparked your interest in the area of software, AI, and the business side of it too.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm CRO of Aimprosoft. We're a tech consultancy that builds software for our partners and helps them to identify areas of their business where there's opportunities or inefficiencies, where tech solutions can uh, get them to where they need to be. And my first career was in real estate. And when in 2006, 2007, 2008, it was absolutely, well, it was booming all over the world, but especially in Eastern Europe, because it was that coming 15 years or so after the changes of the collapse of the, it was never part of the Soviet bloc, but it was one of the satellites in Eastern Europe that was within the Soviet sphere. And then the change into a market economy and democracy sparked a huge period of change and economic activity and cultural shift as well. So when I arrived here, it was really dynamic, exciting time, and the real estate market was booming, and a lot of people who had invested in real estate in the West, in the USA, in the UK, and in Western Europe, they were starting to look for new exciting markets where those margins were still high and the upside was still, let's say, maybe more significant because it was at an earlier stage of development. So I kind of fell into that market, just looking for a job to stay in the region because I was enjoying myself. But it was a pretty interesting time to be there, especially for someone in their I was mid to late 20s in this market. And the level of responsibility and opportunities that I was able to get here were, I think, a lot bigger than they would have been in the UK at that time of my life with that level of experience. A few years later, I was back in the UK. We started a startup with an old friend of mine from Bulgaria, actually, who was by then based in London with a digital marketing agency. And I at the time there was changes in regulation around financial advice. So before that, it had been the case that banks and other providers would offer free financial advisors, and the business model was that they would earn commissions on the investment products that their clients would buy, and then that was banned because of conflict of interest. So banks and other financial institutions stopped offering that service. Then retail investors, they had an advice gap. So we built like an online media portal which was supposed to plug that advice gap between a combination of news analysis and comparison platform for different providers, products, and services. And that was a relatively large software development project that went on for a number of years. And officially I was the CEO, COO, but as you know, in the startup world, that's a little bit
Mhm.
nonsense. I was doing everything from editor in
Yeah,
chief to
multiple hats.
marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one of my main roles was as the product owner of the platform that we were building. So we started off with an external provider. At one stage, we brought it in-house with a development team there for a couple of years. At a certain point, we went out again. So that was both a huge experience for me in terms of the process of building a software product, and as well the different ways that you can approach that from a business model, and the advantages and disadvantages of those different ways, doing it in-house, doing it with a provider. And there's always trade-offs with any approach. So that kind of maybe steeped me a little bit more deeply in the development space, as well as the building products and entrepreneurial journey. And we sold that company in 2017. It wasn't a huge company. We called it a paid MBA with my co-founder afterwards. We made a little bit, not that much, but the experience was massive. And I consulted for a couple of years after that, mainly on go-to-market frameworks and different digital marketing strategies and approaches. One of my clients was a IT services company, a German company. And at one stage, they offered me the role of head of marketing. And I was ready to kind of dive into a little bit more of a pressure job again after those couple of years of consulting, after the tough years of the startup. And then I got really engrossed in the sector, in this, both in terms of IT services as a sector, and building software and the digital economy more generally. And being in a marketing role at that time, I was involved in a lot of content. And one of the advantages of that was that I really built up a pretty big, pretty good picture in terms for a non-technical person, in terms of how software development works from an architectural point of view, all the different bits and pieces that are involved in that. And that eventually led me to Aimprosoft, where I joined as chief revenue officer at the beginning of 2024. So that's a brief roundup of my professional life. Yeah, leaving Scotland as a youngster, heading out to Eastern Europe, and going through the different stages that brought me here.
I love it. I love the synopsis of your life. You got the mind of a software developer and you got the beard of the philosopher. It's all there. It all comes together.
I think
So
some of my colleagues would dispute me having the mind of a software developer, but
well, you're learning a lot of things. You've worn
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of hats, so
yeah.
the experience, I guess,
I'm
is there.
I'm
So
I'm the link between the technical side and the business side.
there
So
you
yeah,
go.
and that's valuable as well.
There you go. And then that's awesome. I love the backstory. So with Aimprosoft, how did that kind of come across your purview? Did someone reach out to you? Did you find them looking for an opportunity, or what was kind of the link there that led you to
Yeah,
become a CRO?
they reached out to me. So they reached a point in their development where they felt they needed that strategic layer between the CEO and the heads of sales and marketing. The company was also going through a bit of a shift where we'll be 20 years old in this summer. So we've been on the market for quite a long time, and the market has evolved over those years. And for 15, 16, 17 years, you didn't really need a sales and marketing function in software development companies to grow to a decent size, because there was such a demand to supply disbalance that companies were struggling to find the specialists that they needed. And just through word of mouth and referrals, the company grew. But then once you hit the kind of mid-size as a company, you do need to start building out that more structured go-to-market departments that can kind of take the company to the next level. So I joined just over about a year and a half ago now with that remit to kind of, well, not to kind of, but to actually set up a more professional developed structure to kind of take us from that mid-sized company that we'd reached up to the next level, and get everything in place there, and also a little bit be that public face of the company that can travel around, can speak to people, can present what we're doing, what we're working on.
Yeah, speaking of go to market, what are the problems, I guess you would say, that Aimprosoft is really trying to solve for the market? Like, what kind of encapsulates the core ethos for Aimprosoft?
Yeah, so basically, our mission, or what we do, is we help our partners arrive at and design the most effective technology solution to either an opportunity, so a growth opportunity, or an inefficiency. So something in their processes or the way that they work that's sucking up time, which uh, could be more valuably spent on growth opportunities. So we kind of look at the bigger business picture, the prior, like where's the company trying to get to, what are the business priorities at this particular moment, and where are the blockers there, and is there a technology solution that can break through those blockers? Sometimes our clients have a pretty good idea of what they want to build or what they think they need to build. We might help them refine that. Other times they won't really know, and we'll kind of come in as almost as business analysts, and we'll look at what the problem is, how does it align with the company's strategic priorities, and within that context, suggest a technology solution. And then we'll typically build it for them either in its entirety, 360 degrees, or in support of their in-house team. But yeah, I think you can sum it up as we're there to put in place a technology solution that takes our partners from A to B, and to fill those gaps that they're missing in terms of either knowing how to do that or the implementation or both.
Yeah, essentially like doing more with less.
Yeah, and that's where the AI stuff comes in. That focus is kind of been sharpened over the last couple of years as budgets tighten, but the let's say the technology tools to do more with less improve.
Yeah, how does the AI play into this? It might be a little bit of a self-explanatory question, but with the proliferation of AI these days, and it really kicking up just 3 years ago, it's kind of crazy to think about it like that. 2 years ago, um, and really starting to have a place in making things more efficient, optimizing systems. I imagine this is a massive tool for you guys at Aimprosoft, and I'm curious, what services you're kind of building out of this that you're offering to clients, within strategy, consulting, assessment, testing, ethics, compliance. I'm sure there's like a million different things, but can you give us a bit of a breakdown of what some of those services kind of look like?
So I think the first thing is that like the term AI, it can cover so many things. Like there are so many potential applications, and you're right that it's because this has kind of arrived on the scene, let's say 3 years ago, but it's really only the last year that capabilities of the, let's say the core systems, the underlying products, the LLMs. Um, OpenAI, ChatGPT is obviously was the first to market, but then Gemini, Cloud, all the different LLMs that power a lot of these capabilities. And then again, we're talking about generative AI, and there's other types of AI like machine learning, deep learning, like neural networks and so on, which operate in different ways. But now the market is very much focused on generative AI because that's kind of furthest ahead in terms of practical applications within the context of mainstream businesses rather than deep technology uh, businesses. Um, so I think I started to ramble a little bit there. So let's pull it back, pull it back in. Um, so I think over the last couple, let's say if we step back 3 years ago, people started playing with the first models that came out, usually for generating text in some format or another. Um, there was a lot of hype, but there was also a lot of weaknesses. The hallucinations were fairly glaring at that point. The quality of output was um, a little bit holy, but it started to, so people were playing, then interest kind of ebbed a little bit, and maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago, as some of the newer models started to be released, it started to pick up again. And then I think from autumn last year, when 4.0 and the other latest generation models came out and they were a significant leap forward, then the everyone started really focusing in on the area again and thinking, okay, now it's getting to the point where we can start to potentially apply this stuff and build it into companies. For startups, the process was a lot faster and easier. Or micro companies, they're relatively uncomplex in terms of the number of people involved, number of processes, and so on. And you can build from the ground up. Mid-sized to larger size companies, it's a lot more difficult. So people started experimenting, doing little pilot projects, but and I think it still exists to a large extent. There's that gap between what can be done theoretically and how do you build that into the complex systems of a mid to large size organization. And I think that's where we kind of focused in on. It's helping our partners go through that early adoption phase where they start to pinpoint it's usually peripheral processes and activities around their business where uh, it sucks up a lot of time. It's relatively resource intensive, which typically means it's expensive in one way or another. And saying, okay, where can we help start to build business cases without talking about complex systems or uh, things that are riskier in terms of potentially breaking everything around it if things go badly. There's also still a lot of fear and risk around compliance. Uh, what happens if IP is fed into LLMs and so on? So we started with ourselves. So a little over a year ago, we took some of our top engineers out of the projects that they were working on with clients. We gave them time to start playing around with technologies. Uh, these were guys who had already started doing that on their own initiative, so they were a little bit further along the road. But it was like, okay, can we start building things that can actually be applied in real life, and we can build those ROI cases. So we started looking at some of our own internal processes. So we're a software development company, so we have around 250 engineers that are allocated to different projects. Some of them stay there for years. Some of them are going in for a few months at a time to solve a particular problem, and then they'll rotate into the next project. So there's a fairly complex logistics delivery management operation behind that. So we started trying to automate some of the things that we were doing manually through Excels and uh, different platforms, and trying to pull things together and automate things. We had some pretty interesting case studies there. Also within finance and revenue operations, say, okay, can we have these data in different places? Can we build an agent that was able to uh, take data out of three different siloed areas and combine them, so we could on the fly ask for insights into, for example, how many partners have we onboarded in the energy space since 2021, and to be able to kind of pull that information out. And we also started working on our core business is developing software. So there's all sorts of different interesting things you can do with AI tools. Um, but one of the things that when we started speaking to our partners about what would they like to do with AI, or where do they see inefficiencies that would, in an ideal world, we could come up with, if new AI tools could help to solve those. And they had a lot of ideas, but what became clear was that their biggest priority in the short term was how can we reduce costs around what we're already doing. And developing software is an expensive thing to do. Software engineers are not the cheapest professionals. They're highly qualified. There's market competition for the good ones, and almost every company does develop software, or even if they use SaaS, they usually have their own customizations to different systems, or they'll need to build their own proprietary system for something or another, regardless of whether they're a tech or product company. And it's expensive. So we started looking at how we could realistically, or how we could use AI within the software development process across the different stages of the life cycle, from ideation and prototyping, UI UX, through to development itself, and then everything around that, like testing and hosting and all of those different stages. So we started testing the different tools, and more importantly, how and when those tools are applied, and the productivity gains be measured. So benchmarking. So how long would have setting up these tests and running them have taken before? How long do they take now? Because one of the issues that we our clients told us that they had was that they know everyone in their IT departments are using different tools, but they're doing it usually on their own initiative. So first of all, companies don't know who's using what, which it's a governance problem. And first of all, because do these tools comply with the company's framework around data privacy, security, etc., etc. And second of all, it's not measurable. So when this person says that they're using this, it's making their job easier. We believe them, but that's not scalable. So how do we benchmark that? So what exactly are they using it for? How long did it take before? How long does it take now? We now have a new benchmark for what kind of productivity we should expect, and that's one of the biggest issues. The companies don't often know always if productivity gains are being fed back into the company. So someone saved 6 hours a week by automating some part of their job, but is are those 6 hours then being used to add additional value within the role, or is someone using them to mow their lawn? So it was all about kind of not only getting that increase in productivity, but in a measurable way, so that our partners could start to build a business case around it to say, okay, this is one of our AI pilot projects. We're using all these tools and automations within software development process. We've saved 20% here. We've saved 60% there. We think with a complex software development or software system, realistically, you can save 30 to 40% in terms of, or you can gain 30 to 40% in terms of productivity, but you can gain much more in certain areas. So, for example, testing. That's one of the spaces where AI makes a huge difference, and you can cut down resources by 60-70% quite easily. So it's looking for, and different companies spend more time in different places. So if it's an old legacy system, the issue will be maybe 70% of the development team's time is spent fixing bugs. With another company, it will be more about it's a new product, so it's more about building the product, and then you'll have different savings or different productivity gains depending on where the on the particular project. So it's what's sucking the time, and where can we apply tools that are benchmarked, that are compliant with the company's governance, and show after 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months return on investment on that, so that that can then be sold up and through the organization.
Do you tend to see like a certain type of company that's looking to work with you guys? Or do you have like a client avatar in terms of like who you generally try to work with, or is it kind of like broad based? Is it pretty open?
I mean, we're a mid-sized company, and typically the stars tend to align with we we work our sweet spot is often with other mid-sized companies. Like larger companies tend to have requirements that only other larger companies can meet. Smaller companies also have different sets of requirements. So where we tend to fit is typically that kind of mid-market area. We've also had a huge amount of over our history, a huge amount of success with startups or scale-ups that are kind of hitting that period where they're moving on to the next level. And I think one of our best narratives is a company in the telecom sector in the UK that we started working with 15 years ago. As they were just starting out, they had a little bit of funding, and they were building out a wholesale telecom business, and we started working with them to help them build the platform that they would sell their wholesale services through. And they were acquired eventually. They were acquired a second time, and now they're part of an enterprise level company, one of the bigger telecoms mobile providers in the UK. So that's one of our big success stories, where we started off with a company that was literally 4 or 5 people, and we've grown with them over the years, and that's a great way to kind of like build a relationship that lasts for a long time, and also grows a company alongside the partner that we are providing the service for. So that would be a great example of a smaller company that we started to work with, and grew with them right up to enterprise level. But yeah, typically speaking, yeah, that kind of scale up to mid-sized company is our sweet spot. And we've worked over the years, we've worked across quite a number of sectors, but we do focus in, we've got more expertise, more like sector expertise with some particular areas where we've had larger portfolios. Fintech would be one of those, energy and utilities would be another. E-commerce is a big space, and we've done a lot of interesting things there as well.
Yeah, are there any use cases in particular that stand out the most? Because I've seen a whole bunch of stuff up on your website, from Chrome extensions to something called Cash Kick to Surfact, Recollect. You guys have definitely worked on a lot of things.
Yeah, Cashkick is I mean that for US listeners, that's a brand that they may have heard of. I think they started off in 2016 as a startup. We started working with them in 2021, and they'd reached that stage where they had an MVP. They had their platform. So Cashkick is a platform that helps you, like, users can earn money by doing surveys, by trying new games, anything that companies want to get kind of feedback on, and they incentivize that through cash credits. So they reached a certain stage with their original platform that they built, and as they were growing, that wasn't able to scale to meet the current needs. So they brought us in 2021 to kind of rebuild their original product in a scalable way, improving it, but kind of building it as a in terms of infrastructure or modularity, so that it could scale the number of users that it could handle. And in last year, 2024, Inc. magazine placed them as the 11th largest growing company in the US. So we'd like to feel that we made at least some small contribution to helping them, like, get to that growth stage, or that faster growth stage from their initial few years where they had gained some good traction, and then had to move on to the next level.
I want to ask you a question about kind of navigating the legality of AI. I think this is something that's very fascinating because it's like constantly developing, and I don't think anyone really knows how to look at it or how to approach it. But I'm curious how you guys kind of look at this and approach this, especially being where you are in your market and everything. Um, for clients, helping them avoid whether it's biases, risks, privacy issues, common roadblocks when working with AI and building out uh, software. How do you navigate that so that it can be done, freely, and then how is that handled? Are you doing it from like a consulting capacity? Do you take on like a more hands-on role with teams to kind of work with them more closely? What does your scope kind of look like when it comes to that?
Yeah, so I mean, we do both. We do pure consulting, or we do consulting and implementation. So normally companies are aware of what the potential risks are. Sometimes they're not, but in the majority of cases they are, and it's more about they know what they can't do. So, for example, if you're in any kind of regulated industry, whether it's children's education or financial sector, health sector, nothing can go. You can't use AI tools in a way that anything goes out of the organization. So you can't be using like public large language models, whatever it might be, ChatGPT or Claude or any of the other options, without control there. So one of the things that can be done is you set up like an on-premise server that hosts a local proprietary large language model that's often powered by the training of one of the underlying core models, but the infrastructure is set up in such a way that it's no data goes out. And that's one of the main things that our clients are concerned about and are looking for help on. Another big thing is that a lot of companies, they're doing little things, they're doing pilots. They're kind of putting in those reps to get people used to using AI tools, to getting into the mindset of uh, thinking about how what are the opportunities, what can AI be applied to in a relatively low risk way. Um, so getting those initial building blocks in place. So I mentioned before that it's getting those pilot projects where you can demonstrate measurable ROI. They can build that trust and the metrics that C-suite, for example, needs to invest in things or to allocate time and resources to. Another area, again, like measurability and observability, in terms of biases, that's more about how you use the output. And again, it's a case of most companies understand that there always has to be a human in the loop. Like AI is it's a magnifier of output, but it in a lot of cases you still need that human whose output is amplified, or magnified by the support of automation or data insights, whatever the application might be. So that's an area that we don't deal with so much in terms of, let's say, human resources training. If we're talking about the software development side of things, we do. When it The other thing, it's getting those building blocks in place. So yeah, so tell helping companies understand that they need to start training, or simply getting their people used to using those tools and being proactive themselves, looking for those use cases within a structured way, so that people are not using random tools that no one knows about, that maybe don't fit the governance framework of the company. um, Data strategy is a huge one, because especially for mid-size and larger companies, they will be a bit slower to integrate AI capabilities because their systems are complex. There's a lot more dependencies, so they start to create those things around the peripheries. So customer service internally with revenue insights, um, bringing together siloed data. But whatever companies will do in the future, they need AI is powered by data. So whether companies are ready to do larger projects in the next 6 months or 1 year or not, the one thing that they can do, which will massively speed up what happens when things do start getting to be implemented, is to get that data ready. So it's going in looking what data is used by this company or could be used by this company. What format is it in at the moment? Where is it stored at the moment? Uh, we need to build an architecture so that data is ready for AI to be plugged into, or to be plugged into AI, which will then enable those more complex projects in, or those bigger, more central projects in the future. Um, and again, as I mentioned, is being able to build those business cases that can then support further implementation. I think it's one of those things that it's like if you start a fitness program for the first 6 months, you do your reps, you might not see a huge transformation, but without putting in that groundwork, you won't be able to move on to the level where it is a big difference, it is visible. So I think that's the main thing that we're helping companies with at the moment, our partners. It's getting those initial reps in that position them for the big change which is coming.
Another thing I want to ask you is kind of more or less like a high level question about, I think, the future of AI in business, in software, kind of within this industry. Um, Again, like we mentioned earlier, AI is moving like at a super rapid pace and it's changing things across multiple different industries. But I'm starting to wonder if, many companies, they risk, kind of getting left out of their respective industries if they don't integrate AI. Um, and, is there like this need for them to strategize and build with AI to remain competitive, in that corporate food chain? Like what's your opinion kind of on that and the importance of doing this and working with a company like Aimprosoft as well that's, taking the forefront and integrating AI into systems?
The market is competitive, so if you can do the same thing or something better with fewer resources, then you'll have a huge competitive advantage. It's not the only thing that makes or breaks a business. There are different elements involved, but it's definitely one of the core things. Um, so I think it's pretty clear that if any company that ignores something that can multiply the efficiency of all different areas of their business, both customer facing and internally, uh, then they're going to have fewer resources compared to their competitors 2-3 years down the line. Um, and that's obviously a competitor. That's obviously a big disadvantage. They'll also, in terms of where they're spending time and focus, if competitors have automated those areas and you haven't, then you're going to be spending your time, your mental energy, your physical capabilities in an area which is not necessarily adding the most value to your company. So I think with smaller companies, they have to move really fast, because smaller companies, they have to be, in order to compensate for the having less finance, having a smaller like brand awareness, they have to be doing things better.
It closes
um,
that gap quite a bit between the big
yeah,
companies and the smaller ones.
yeah, and this is right now is a big opportunity for smaller and mid-sized companies to close that gap, because it will take the larger companies longer to go through their AI transformation. You just need to look at digital transformation from the previous 2 decades. The banks are still running on mainframes built on COBOL, which is a programming language that goes back decades. But because it's so central to everything, you can't just rip it out. You have to kind of build around it and integrate it with newer technologies. Whereas digitally native neobanks, they kind of built with modern technologies from the beginning, and now we've reached that tipping point where they're starting to be real competitive threat to the legacy players in that space. What's happening with AI, the acceleration is so much faster. Every single study kind of shows the different levels of, let's say, digitalization that goes from uh, networks and systems through to the internet, through to the application layer, and now the AI application or the AI agent layer will be bigger still. The potential advantage of being able to move quickly is even greater than it ever was. Larger companies, while accepting that they have to take things a little bit more slowly because it's more complex, there's more people involved, it's messier, but they also understand that if they don't start doing things now, they have that moat, they have the big brand, they have the finances, they have the existing revenue streams. which allow them to be a little bit slower, but to a level. If they're too slow, then before they know it, the smaller mid-sized players will be way ahead of them, both in terms of cost efficiencies, so making their organization leaner in terms of what they need to put into it, but also in terms of the growth areas. So what are new products that can be put in front of users, clients? How is their user experience made better? And AI will obviously amplify the speed that those things can be brought to market. So I think smaller companies, they have to take the opportunity to move as fast as they possibly can at this stage, and the larger companies, they also have to move as fast as they can within the context that it's doing things around the periphery. It's getting those projects that they can demonstrate profitability, or new features, new products, new services that they can bring to market. But if they're not putting in that groundwork now, then they risk the smaller and mid-sized companies closing that gap in the meanwhile.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of chatter more and more over the past few months about the possibility of there being like the first Fortune 500 company that really is solely ran by like one man or one woman with like a legion of AI agents and AI and software and AI and accounting and AI and you know, different outreach management and marketing and media and comms and um, do you think that's possible at some point? Like, do you think we'll head, to a future where we might actually see like the first startup where it really is truly just one person? Like we kind of joked at the beginning about wearing like all these different hats at first, and it's a very normal thing in startup culture. But I do think it's, possible that we might see a couple unicorn companies at some point where, someone leverages AI in the right way for software and all of a sudden they might be the only person or member of that company and it does really really well. Do you think that that will happen at some point?
I think it's impossible to really understand what the landscape is going to look like in 5 to 10 years from now. Right now, I don't think it's possible. I think it's a little bit hypey there. um, you can definitely develop a product relatively quickly. You can get market traction. You can grow revenues to get to kind of Fortune 500 level. I don't think it's possible to do it with one or two people and an army of agents. I think it's very important to understand that AI is an amplifier. It's a magnifier of productivity, but you'll still need humans to oversee those agents and to be the experts that guide, that know what is the right data to be inputting, to be able to understand when the output is great, when it's not quite there. If you lack that supervision, like, you always have edge cases, you always have scenarios that AI won't deal with particularly well at this stage. um, what we'll see is companies reaching that kind of like 1 million revenue, 5 million revenue, 100 million revenue on far, far smaller teams than in the past, maybe 10 times smaller within 5, 6, 7 years, which have started as AI native companies or products from the beginning. They'll get to those landmarks with far uh, smaller teams. But yeah, I don't think that you'll be seeing companies in the Fortune 500 where you have a team of 4 or 5 people and an army of AI agents. 10 years from now, maybe, who knows? But in the next 5 years, I don't think so.
Maybe if we get a bunch of these Optimus bots working for us and
Yeah.
Sam Altman can crack AGI, who knows what happens in 10 years, but it's an exciting point in time that we live in. And it's an exciting future to see all these things kind of develop out. Speaking about the future, what's kind of on your guys's roadmap and horizon for Aimprosoft this year? Do you have any important updates, announcements, milestones, anything coming up that people should be aware about? Any new projects, use cases, things you guys are working on? Anything exciting?
Yeah, I mean, we're beefing up our AI skills through a combination of both projects that we're working on currently, but also in terms of hiring. Um, so we're bringing in some additional capacity there. Um, the main thing that we're focused on at the moment is we have several pilot projects that have already either been rolled out or in the process of rolling out with our clients, and we need to get to the point where we have that, let's say, 6 months of data that we can then uh, help our clients like package as a business case and help them to then uh, accelerate their AI transformation internally. So for us, that's a big step. It's going from those initial pilot projects to then setting a roadmap where they can build out from there and really start making a difference within their organizations.
Any events or engagements, conferences, things that you guys might be attending or you yourself that are kind of in the realm of Aimprosoft's goals?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be in London in early June for London Tech Week. There's also an AI summit which is going on that week as well. So we there for the week, and we'll be catching up with some of our existing partners and talking to the market. For us, it's always extremely important to understand what our company is doing at the moment, what would they like to do, where the challenges are. That kind of helps us to shape the focus of our service. As well. So, and we'll be going to other events, I'm sure, in the autumn, but we don't have a defined schedule just at the moment. I could potentially be in Amsterdam in early June as well. There's a couple of interesting tech events going on there.
Any thoughts about maybe doing anything in the US sometime this year?
Yeah, I mean, we're currently working on a joint venture in the US with it's originally a client of ours that we've been working with for a number of years, and they do interesting things in the cloud space. And US is our biggest market. It's in terms of the logistics of traveling to the US regularly. It's obviously more tricky compared to Europe. So we see joint ventures in the US as a big part of our growth in the market on the other side of the Atlantic, and we've got high hopes for the JV that we're currently discussing and making progress on.
Nice, exciting. Let me know if you guys are doing anything in the US in terms of like any conferences, engagements, whatnot. I'll be around. Would love to meet up with you at some point
Yeah,
in
I'd love some
person.
advice as well in terms of what we should maybe be looking at, because we're pretty familiar with the European circuit, but a little bit less so with the US one. So
Yeah, totally.
any tips would be appreciated.
Yeah, let's get together sometime. Just keep me updated on where you're gonna be, and maybe we can do an episode in person too. That'd be a lot of fun.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Where can people go to learn more about Aimprosoft? They want to set up a consultation, an intro call, first point of contact. What's the best way to go about doing that?
They can go to our website, which is aimprosoft.com, or they can look me up on LinkedIn and drop me a line directly, so they can find me with John Alexander Adam. My middle name's in there to bring me out of the crowd of John Adams on LinkedIn. So yeah, either of those two channels would be great. We're always happy to exchange uh, knowledge and experience on what we're working on. We love to hear what other people are working on. So even if there's no direct commercial interest, we want to speak to people doing interesting things with AI, with software development, and we're happy to share what we're doing.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you taking the time today. It's been a really good conversation and enjoyed learning a lot more about what you guys are doing with Aimprosoft. I'm sure a lot of people will as well. You're doing some crucial work too, for companies on the software front, but especially incorporating AI and showing how that can take place is, I think, very vital. So keep up the great work. Keep me updated, and let's get together some point in person. Would love to do something. But in the meantime, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, appreciate it, Brandon. Speak soon.